Hey, it's Friday afternoon. It's Green Rush Live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the nation's only live business talk show that focuses on cannabis. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And he's joined every week, except for that short period of time I was ill, by me, David Rabinovitz, his trusty sidekick, broadcasting today live from Syracuse, where the New York State Fair is going on.
Oh, well, there you go. I love it. And you know, I'm all about cannabis coast to coast. We'll be checking in at various locations all over the United States about the latest in the cannabis news. What is the hottest subject in the business of cannabis? And of course, we are always awaiting on the third Friday of every month an appearance from Morgan Fox from the NCIA. And as I speak, you knew that he was going to pop right in. But before we get to Morgan Fox and an update on what's going on the legalization front down in Washington, D.C., I do want to give congratulations to our winner of YourStory.com. That's right. That is the cannabis connoisseur's storage device that we give away every month or so. And we have a winner this week. In fact, if he happens to be watching, he's going to be surprised because I told him that he won a t-shirt as a finalist. What I didn't share was that he's also getting this story device, and that is right over there. There it is, right there underneath that little trophy of mine. There's the story device. But I want to give the opportunity to this young gentleman because his story is pretty compelling, and I think it will also kind of ring true to a lot of people who might remember that day, September 11th, 2001, because we all remember where we were during that horrible, horrible historic day in the United States history when we lost quite a few people because of an act of terrorism. So this is this gentleman's story. David, you have no idea what this story is, but I'm going to read it to you and I'm going to get a reaction from you, and then we'll bring Morgan in. And I'm going to read it in his words, and I'm just going to call him Raz, okay? Because that's not his real name, but it's a special name for him. This is my story. At age 18, I started working as a trading assistant for an independent stockbroker on the floor of the NYSE in 1998. I actually got the job through a band audition. The singer in the band was working on the floor with his brother, our boss, and needed someone else to help with the business. So once on the floor, it was very surreal. A couple years passed and 9/11 happened. I was down there when the whole ordeal stuck them all into the stock exchange from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. when they opened the doors, and I ran through a dust cloud for a mile before I saw daylight. Our boss would get us both an ounce every month, and I've continued to use that for more than 20 plus years. During my monthly 9/11 wellness program checkups, they would take my vitals and also have me sit with a psychologist for monitoring. I let them know that I've been smoking since 18 and felt also being a Rastafarian, it was my right to not accept any chemical or animal-based medication. In conjunction with natural superfoods, maca, I was able to prove to them I was okay with the natural way. Living in New York and now North Carolina, I've always wished for the day I wouldn't have to sneak around to get it. As a 9/11 survivor, I wish I could have just been prescribed that. Really hope in these trying times, people will understand there is nothing evil or negative when it comes to this plant. I truly feel I would not be here healthy and sane if it were not for me counting on the healing properties of this important plant. Maja bless and love everyone, even those who are against legalizing it. And that's from Raz. So Raz, congratulations to you. We're going to be sending you, or actually the YourStory.com group are going to be sending you a cannabis storage device that I think you deserve for living to tell the story. And that's really always been my life philosophy as well. And David, what's your reaction to that story? I mean, there's a million of them out there, but that one really hit home to me for a couple of reasons.
That's a very compelling story. And you're right, Jimmy. Anybody who's old enough knows where they were that day, because I remember that day quite well. It was surreal. But and I compliment him for his, for getting through what he got through. I would not have wanted to be in New York at that time. Look, obviously, we all know now all the health issues that came out for the survivors who had to deal with those fine particles in the air.
Absolutely. And I just can't imagine running through that cloud and,
Running through that cloud and not knowing where the end of it was, right? People
absolutely.
going down to the water with boats trying to pick them up. Just anybody who had a boat came in to try to help shuttle people off the island. That was a messy day.
That's right. And luckily, we haven't had too many messy days lately in Washington, D.C., or at least not in a few months. But we do know that the NCIA is always down there in Washington, D.C., in the trenches, fighting the good fight. And on the third Friday of every month, we welcome in Morgan Fox, the Director of Communications for the NCIA. Morgan, always a pleasure. Good to see you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's funny that you mentioned that because actually a bomb threat shut down our office yesterday.
Wow.
Never a dull moment, right?
Yeah. It's also like, kind of tying into prohibition with 9/11. When that happened, I was like a newly minted freshman in college, and I was currently on probation for cannabis possession charges. And all I wanted to do was smoke a joint, but I couldn't because I had regular drug tests basically every 2 weeks. Plus, I was paying out the nose for that college because I'd had the ability to get federal loans and federal financial assistance taken from me because I had a cannabis charge.
Wow. So that's part of your own personal cannabis story, isn't it, Morgan?
Yeah, and an unfortunate one. I mean, clearly not nearly as poignant or tragic as the gentleman's that you were just sharing, but it definitely was something I was thinking about.
And we are getting more and more of these incredible stories. Some I read and I say, this sounds more like fiction than nonfiction. But the ones that really do hit home, you can tell which are the true ones, the people who are pouring their souls out about the role it's played in their lives. And Morgan, you know this. You've heard a million of these stories about how cannabis has saved someone's life. Cannabis has changed someone's life. And even in the news today, one of the biggest names in basketball, Kevin Durant, is now coming out of his cannabis closet and getting involved in the cause. How much of a help does it have your cause as someone in Washington, D.C., working the hallways, if you will, to try and get more acceptance to move legalization forward? Does it help having superstars like Kevin Durant basically, aligning his own name to the cause?
It absolutely does. I mean, both in terms of visibility and changing the cultural narrative around this, but also in terms of the celebrity access that those folks have to the levers of power. Even if they're not direct, they can still sway things pretty heavily. But I also think that it's super important to note that like a lot of the folks that have been coming out in favor of this from the celebrities, athletes, etc., are focusing on the social justice portion of this issue much more than just I'm a consumer and I should be able to do whatever I want. And there's total validity in that statement. You should be able to do what you want with your own body and determine what you want to consume. But the fact that folks like Kevin Durant are coming out and trying to reduce the stigma around the use of cannabis, both for medical purposes, but also from a social justice standpoint, is extremely important. And the more powerful voices with broad spread and broad appeal that we can get backing this up, the better.
And hopefully he's willing to even write a check for the cause too. And I don't mean for the lobbyist cause, but for those who have been most impacted on the failed war on drugs, getting an opportunity to get into the business. And a bit later on this show, we're going to be talking with three people that will be able to express their own personal stories. And they have recently just opened up a dispensary in Worcester, Massachusetts called Major Bloom. And we look forward to talking from them. And David, I know Ulysses Youngblood and Laury Lucien as well.
Yes, great people.
I think it's absolutely important for these folks, particularly considering the vast resources they have at their disposal, to contribute financially to lobbying efforts, particularly when the vast majority of money that is starting to come into the lobbying space is from organizations where social justice is not necessarily their top priority. And if you've got somebody whose personal wealth is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, they could really upend the lobbying scene in DC by donating to organizations and individuals that hold those same values, as opposed to long entrenched corporate interests. Not to say that all of those interests are pushing for bad things. Some of them are pushing for very good things and are totally in line with groups like mine that are focused on small businesses. But it is very important to, particularly if you have large amounts of personal wealth, to contribute to things like lobbying efforts with organizations that actually hold the same values as you. But at the same time, you made a very good point about contributing directly to the people that have been most impacted by cannabis prohibition. And that's why things like Al Harrington's program, where he wants to create 100 BIPOC millionaires in the cannabis space over the next couple of years, and is donating significant amounts of funds to accomplish that purpose. It's absolutely vital to have both sides of that coin happening at all times.
Yeah, Chris Webber is doing a similar thing with a fund as well, and I think there's another guy. His last name is Koch, is it not? Charles Koch, isn't he putting his money where his mouth and wealth is too?
Yeah, a lot of people give the Koch Foundation a lot of negativity, I guess is the best word, because they haven't been the best on a lot of issues that I think a lot of people that support the end of prohibition hold dear. But the Koch organization, particularly the Charles Koch Institute, have been longtime allies of ending prohibition and responsible and sensible cannabis policy reform and drug policy reform generally. So I mean, I think that sometimes they get a little bit of a bad rep, and people don't necessarily want to work with them. But the fact of the matter is that they have been putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to drug policy reform for a long time.
And what is the latest? I know that for the most part, August is a time for vacation and recess in the world of politics, but I'm going out on a limb thinking there's still plenty for you to do down there.
I mean, a recess just means that we have a little bit of time to schedule more meetings. Okay. And largely a lot of our effort over the last month or so, and continuing until the end of the month and even beyond, is taking feedback from our constituents and our members and our major stakeholders to try to find ways to improve the draft language of the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act that was introduced by Senate Majority Leader Schumer, as well as Senators Cory Booker and Ron Wyden. Despite the fact that this is one of the most well-considered pieces of potential legislation that we've seen, and the fact that there was a lot of stakeholder engagement on the part of legislative offices, there are some serious problems with this draft language, particularly when it comes to the tax structure, which, as it's currently written, will destroy small businesses, and also not even small businesses, will basically destroy domestic businesses entirely in favor of allowing international producers who don't have nearly the amount of regulatory control and can produce things much cheaper to flood the U.S. market. So, I mean, if we want to make cannabis a tool for repairing the harms of prohibition and creating generational wealth in people that have been robbed from it because of prohibition, there's going to need to be some serious rewrites in that legislation. But the sponsors have said that they're very open to those suggestions, and we're still in the process of finalizing our at least broad stroke comments. And once that's done, we're going to start doing redlining on the bill and figure out point by point exactly what needs to be changed, and offer replacement or alternative language that will actually protect small businesses, protect public safety, and protect the U.S. cannabis market.
So September 1st was the deadline for public comments on this draft proposal. Do you have any idea of, has the Finance Committee been inundated with emails from that address that's been made public now for a couple of weeks? What has been that response as far as you know?
Well, I don't have access to that email account, and as far as I know, it's still August, right?
Right. Well, September 1st is only, I think, 10 days away, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's not
You know,
rush
I
it.
have no doubt that they have a lot of information to sift through. You know, which is why we were trying to reach out to our members and stakeholders so that we could incorporate that into you know, a single cohesive document that incorporated the input of, you know, literally thousands of member businesses and individuals who are experts in this field, so that we can kind of distill it down into something that, you know, because of our organization's track record and our visibility on the Hill, that, you know, hopefully, you know, we'll be able to rise to the top in terms of you know, the visibility of those comments. And, you know, I think that the legislative offices that are going to be looking at these are absolutely committed to taking, you know, constituent and commentary into account. You know, we just want to make sure that they're listening to the right people. And I'm sure that there have been plenty of crank emails sent to that account over the last month or so. But, you know, in general, you know, I think that the folks that are the most knowledgeable about this issue and that have the most access to people that are directly involved in the issue, you know, whether it be from the industry side or the activist side, or, you know, any of the impacted parties involved, are really putting their best foot forward in terms of submitting really well thought out, well considered commentary. And the impression right now is that Senate leadership is going to actively consider those.
So I guess the question is, if you had to prioritize what is the most important reform that can be made at the federal level for the cannabis industry, is it A, banking, B, social justice, or can it be just one stroke of the pen and descheduling cannabis off the Controlled Substances Act? Which of the three that you hear might be the most important thing?
Well, you know, I think that that's a false choice, because all of these things need to happen.
I know.
The question is when and how.
Right.
You know, clearly we need descheduling and federal regulation, but we should not be doing that without very robust restorative justice provisions involved in it. At the same time, we do need banking reform, and that's a discrete and narrowly tailored solution that will help small businesses and marginalized communities much more than it will help you know, big businesses. Particularly since, you know, as I've said before on this show, in fact, that, you know, access to capital and access to banking services for bigger businesses in the cannabis space are a line item on their budget, but it's life or death for smaller companies. And, you know, looking at the politics involved in this situation here, you know, we're not going to be able to find consensus in such a Congress that has so much partisan rancor as we're seeing right now, at least in the immediate future. But speed to market for global majority-owned businesses and you know, businesses owned by people of color and other marginalized communities is absolutely essential. And while they're languishing without access to capital and access to banking services, businesses that don't have to worry about these issues are cementing their market footprint. And so this is just something that can be done in the immediate future, that there is bipartisan support for, that will have a positive impact. I mean, I'm not going to say that safe banking is a social equity bill, but it has serious social equity consequences and implications. And if we continue to put the cart before the horse, basically, that just gives well-moneyed interests much more time to cement their hold on the industry, while other businesses suffer. And so, I mean, it's not an issue necessarily of what's more important. It's what can we get done right now versus what can we get done down the road. And every little tiny incremental piece that we get done now helps us push the Overton window more in favor of the things that we really want, so that we don't have to take crappy compromises down the road.
Right. David, as someone who's trying to get yourself a little license locally here in Massachusetts, what would be something you'd like to see? What's your priority from a federal perspective goes on this bill? I mean, are you all focused on getting rid of 280E one way or another, or Is it opening up the banks?
I think opening up the banks is important, Jimmy. I think anything the federal government does at the legalization level is going to resolve 280E, right? If they reschedule it below Schedule 2, so if it's Schedule 3 or below, 280E goes away. If they decriminalize it, 280E goes away. If they legalize it, 280E goes away. So 280E is a really big deal. It's one sentence, 77 words, has a huge impact on the business, but I don't see, and it is a big deal, but it's going to fall away. Just like the up in the Northeast, the leaves fall in the autumn when it gets cold out. 280E is going to fall away when the feds do something about the criminalization of marijuana. So I don't see that as a headline issue. That's going to be it's just going to be it's going to be a positive side effect. I'm more concerned about just what Morgan said, right? If the feds legalize it, the big money that's coming in now is from players who want to get a piece of the market. And you and I have done the business and political history of marijuana bit. I got an email yesterday. I'll be presenting that at NCIA in Atlantic City in New Jersey in early October. And I started to look at the old slides, right, from when I first put that together back in 2019. And, there's a lot that has changed, but the themes are still the same as to what's going on. And the big guys, when they come in and start throwing their money around, they don't care about social equity. Social equity is in their way. So my concern is that the Fed structure the market in a way that gives an advantage to the small players, the small local players, the social equity players. And once the interstate bounds come down, which we're going to learn the end of September in one of our shows, maybe the interstate boundaries have already come down, right, when we have the professor from Vanderbilt on. But once there's interstate commerce, it's just what Morgan said. It's going to be a rush to the bottom. And if anybody who reads cannabis.net, Kurt had a great article this week talking about how one of the delivery technology platforms is now going to buy an MSO, right? Because it's like, I've been saying this for several years. I'm not interested in the cultivation and manufacturing so much as I am in the parts of the licensing chain that touch the consumer. That's where the value is. And that's what we really don't want to see crushed at a federal level when it becomes legal. That needs to be preserved for local small companies in some manner.
It's interesting that you brought up, because you guys know that I am not in favor of rescheduling. That would be a disaster for existing state cannabis systems. But with descheduling, 280E goes away automatically. However, under the tax structure that was suggested under the CAOA, that tax structure over the long term would actually be worse than the current state of affairs under 280E. So that's one of the things that we're going to be commenting on heavily in our submissions to Senate leadership. And regarding interstate commerce, there's actually, it used to be considered to be the only lifeline for social equity because it would lower costs and make lower barriers of entry. And now there's an increasing debate about whether interstate commerce might actually hurt social equity. I tend to think that it would help, but I think that there are a lot of arguments to be made on either side that are honestly better left to professional economists than to PR flags like myself.
Oh,
Morgan, it's going to come down to where you are on the value chain, right? If you're a cultivator, even if you're a social equity cultivator, interstate commerce is going to hurt you. If you happen to be a retailer, interstate commerce could help you because now you have access to more products and potentially at lower costs.
You're not completely beholden to an intrastate system.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, so Morgan, we are just extending we'll extend an invitation to you. We're going to have a show that's going to be about interstate commerce toward the end of September. And if you'd like to be on with us, it could be a very interesting time.
I absolutely would love that opportunity.
Maybe we'll time it to the third Friday in September.
Here's what we need to know in advance, right? Because if you think about the last time we had Morgan on now and this time, what hat will he be wearing the third week of September?
Well, his fall hat, of course. We're still in the summer. We're still in the summer wardrobe right now.
It'll be harvest time. I'll have my cowboy hat on.
There's his
Okay,
cowboy
cool.
hat on. Oh, there you go. There you go. Hey,
There you go.
Morgan, I know we kind of pushed off our 420, our normal 420 break. I noticed you didn't wait for that, which is okay. I got no problem with that either. That being said, we are gonna go into our 420 break. We do want to thank you as always. We love when you show up here every third Friday. And as David suggested, since we do have some impact on exactly what themes we look at as we move forward in September, we'll see if we can time that interview for that third Friday in September coming up. So thank you.
Whatever's
again.
most convenient for you guys. But if I could take a quick 20 seconds to promote some events, just want to make sure that everybody registers to attend or exhibit at NCIA's fall and winter events. The Midwest Cannabis Business Conference is going to be coming up in Detroit on September 22nd and 23rd. And then I believe the 7th Cannabis Business Summit is going to be in San Francisco on December 15th through 17th. So make sure to check those out. And if you are within reaching distance of Washington, D.C., next weekend on August 28th, the National Cannabis Festival will be returning. And that is always a good time. I'll be judging a Canna Tank competition there. And I believe Method Man and Red Man are going to be headlining. There are a lot of great local vendors, great industry actors, a lot of activists. It's the only big music and culture festival that has a pure focus on advocacy that I've seen, and hands down the best one that I've ever been privileged to be a part of. So check that out, nationalcannabisfestival.com.
Happy to do that. And in fact, you're good at these press releases. Make sure I get one. Okay. And we'll put it up on our social media platforms too.
Hey, Jimmy, let me add something in on just
Sure.
to piggyback on what
I've
Morgan
totally
was
lost
saying.
control of this show already. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So for anybody who is a member of NCIA and you would like to be on the NCIA board of directors, they have an open call to get on the board through September 1st. Am I correct on that, Morgan?
I think it's a little bit past that, but I'm not positive. But yes, we are currently accepting applications for new board members.
Well, there you go. Well, if elected, I will not serve, but I certainly appreciate you even thinking of me. Obviously, my invite got lost in the mail. It's okay. It's okay. I've got enough on my plate. Morgan Fox, as always, a pleasure. Hey, I want to make sure that we get. I have a stringer in the DC area. I want to make sure I get some footage or some images of the festival that's going on over that weekend. I think that's next weekend, August 28th, because I know I'm not going to be here next Friday because David is working with Kurt Dalton next Friday as I continue to try to enjoy a little break here and there in my summer as it's quickly dwindling towards fall, as it were, right? All right, fair enough. Hey, Morgan, again, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being so responsible for showing up every third Friday, and we look forward to it. We are going to take our 420 break, and as we always do, we salute that 420 time by saluting my pal, Jonathan Edwards, and his song Shanty. Enjoy, and we'll be back on the other side, and we're going to the dogs. That's right. We're going to be talking about cannabis, CBD, and pets. That's coming up in our next half hour. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just... like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. There's nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studio.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And you know, when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, cannabis has saved my life, cannabis has changed my life. Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time, "It's a whole new world of weed." But as the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows. All right, who let the dogs out? That's what I want to know. Who let the dogs out? Come on. Woof, woof. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. We talk about all things cannabis here every Friday afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. And at the top of the hour, in just about 30 minutes or so, we're going to get into some new ownership and a new dispensary that is opening here in the Massachusetts area. And then at the bottom of the 5 o'clock hour, we'll go head back to New Jersey and talk about some of the new rules that they have introduced. But right now we are joined by a gentleman from Los Angeles, a veterinarian from Los Angeles. And I know that my co-host, David Rabinovitz, is a dog lover. In fact, I could say that he never goes anywhere without his dog. Is that accurate, David?
I wouldn't go quite that far, but I fell in love with a woman who was she probably loves the dogs more than she loves me. We have 3 of them, and one of them came up to Syracuse with us.
There you go. And Dr. Tim Hsu joins us from LA, and he's with a group called the VETCBD Hemp World. And tell us a little bit about your background, Dr. Tim, and how in the world did you get into CBD and pets?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jimmy and David. Really happy to be here. So my background is I'm a veterinarian, and prior to getting into cannabinoid therapeutics, I practiced in general emergency critical care medicine. And for me, the perspective that I have is we always need to be looking at the forefront of medicine. You know, what's next on the radar? Because we know that the way that medicine is practiced today is not how it was practiced yesterday, right? And what I mean by yesterday is looking at it 50 years ago, right? If we went to our doctors today and they say, you know, I learned everything I know in 1950, we'd be in trouble, right? So, you know, fast forward to today and looking into tomorrow, well, what does medicine look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? We know that's going to be different because it's going to be improved. We're going to have new therapeutics, new techniques. But how do we get there? By looking at what some of the untapped areas are. And cannabinoid therapeutics is one of the biggest untapped areas of medicine, primarily our understanding of the endocannabinoid system. So for me, it was really about integrating cannabinoid therapeutics and our understanding of the endocannabinoid system into veterinary medicine. So I started that in 2015, and here we are 6 years later.
You know, it's so funny, Doctor, and I don't know how funny it is. It's just what everyone in the cannabis industry is up against when we talk about ridding the world of stigma. When you try to explain to people that the endocannabinoid system is found in all humans, but then you extend it to all mammals. And that, of course, includes our little furry, warm-blooded friends, your dogs and your cats. I have some friends who are veterinarians, and I remember having early discussions as I was learning about the endocannabinoid system. And, you know, there was a scare because I think for a long time, pet owners were very cautious about their pets getting into their own personal stash that had THC, which is a dangerous cannabinoid for pets. Am I right here?
Well, when we're talking about THC, we want to understand that THC does have medicinal potential. That's the important thing to understand. For a really long time, and this is really unfortunate, that the only exposure that most veterinarians have to THC is seeing pets that have gotten into too much THC and have come in through the emergency route. Right. But the reality is that THC, because it's a partial agonist of the CB1 receptor, and we know that there are benefits of CB1 agonism, especially when it comes to things like pain, for example. THC does have therapeutic potential. Now, the question is using it in the right amount. So whenever pets get presented to the veterinarian, it's because they got into way, way too much THC. When THC is used appropriately in the right amount or in conjunction with other cannabinoids like CBD, it does provide therapeutic benefit. So that is something to keep in mind. It really depends on the amount that's being utilized.
Which is why hemp, which is under 0.3%, or at least technically under 0.3% THC, has been used more effectively to treat pets and their ailments, correct?
It depends on how you present it, because we know that there are certain conditions where THC may actually be very beneficial in larger amounts. For example, if you're dealing with animals that are dealing with severe pain, an increased amount of THC may actually work more effectively. And then also looking at the entire area of cancer, we are still unsure about how cannabinoids, how they interact with cancer cells, but the preliminary preclinical evidence shows that there is potential use for cannabinoids, including THC, in the treatment of cancer cells. So it really just depends on the situation, and every individual is going to be different, and every individual is going to respond differently.
Well, that's certainly true on humans. Is that true for pets too? I'm going to guess yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's not a one size fits all amount that we're using. Basically, what it comes down to is the individual and their condition is going to be responsive to different cannabinoids and different amounts. So, for example, you may have two dogs that are, both 70-pound dogs, and one may be utilizing far less than the other one. It just depends on the individual's physiology and endocannabinoid system.
Gotcha. David, I know as a dog lover and a pet owner, you must have some questions for the doctor here as far as the use of CBD. And how do you communicate to your dog, David, if they can't tell you, hey, David, you're giving me too much stuff here, man? I mean, how does that work?
So let me do this, Jimmy. Rather than throw a question out for me, I threw something into the chat as soon as we got the doctor on to ask, does anybody have any questions?
Yep.
So Bob wants to know, is it normal for a small cat to sleep 10 hours when given a small CBD piece?
It depends. There's a lot more to unwrap there. I mean, cats normally do sleep a lot to begin with. And, it just depends on if that was normal before or afterwards. But the biggest thing is, based off of that, I can't provide any sort of assessment. So in that situation, the best way to have an assessment on that is to see the veterinarian. That is the primary caregiver, because they are able to do the physical exam. They're able to do the blood work to make sure that everything else is normal or potentially abnormal, and they're able to make the best assessment on that. So that's one thing that we always tell people is to see your veterinarian and make sure that they get a complete picture for you.
Yep. I'm actually a fan of it, Jimmy. We have, so up here in Syracuse, my stepdaughter, they have two dogs, and one of the dogs, for whatever reason, is terrified of me. And the only way I could come into the house for the past couple of years is
I could give you a few reasons, David. Go ahead.
I didn't say the word reasons, Jimmy. I said
Okay.
The dog just, for whatever reason, if the dog would see me and panic, and I mean truly panic, like let go all of its body functions.
Okay. I have that effect too. Sometimes when I'm only kidding. Go ahead.
CBD is the only thing that would calm the dog down.
Interesting.
They would give her CBD before I'd show up, and then she'd be fine.
Not surprising to you, Dr. Tim?
So the remarkable thing about CBD is the amount of calm that it can bring for a lot of animals in stressful situations. The biggest example that we see of this every July 4th is that we have a lot of pet owners that come to us and say, my dog, my cat freaks out during the sounds of fireworks. And they've tried a lot of different things, and CBD oftentimes is a complete game changer for them. They go from their dog freaking out to the sound of fireworks to actually being okay with the sound of fireworks. And I've experienced that myself personally with one of my previous dogs who's no longer with us, that before she used to be so scared of any sort of loud noises. But it wasn't until I incorporated CBD into her regimen that those loud noises no longer seemed to bother her. In fact, I remember I actually took her on a walk July 4th one evening when the fireworks were going off in the neighborhood, and she was perfectly fine. And this dog years ago, if there was a car or a motorcycle with a loud exhaust that went down the street, she would freak out from that. And so this was a dramatic night and day difference. And we see that in a lot of animals, actually.
Or Yogi is one of our regular listeners, and he's always on the show. We always appreciate his comments in the chat. He's got a boxer that he claims CBD helps calm the boxer down very nicely. They're
excitable dogs to begin with, right? As a breed.
They can be, yeah.
And you're not surprised to hear the effect that CBD. My question on this is, how do you know you're getting full spectrum CBD? How do you know that it is coming from the actual plant? I mean, there's still a lot of gray area out there when it comes to CBD. As a veterinarian, how do you recommend making sure that you're getting the tested products that are out there?
Yeah, so it all comes down to lab testing. The world of hemp is still a little bit of the wild west in terms of the final product is not required to undergo any sort of testing regimen. And so previously studies that have looked at the hemp market have shown that a fair amount of products that are sold out there actually don't contain the amount of CBD that's listed on the label. And so one of the most important things to do is to make sure that any product that you're purchasing, whatever batch it's created from, has a certificate of analysis that's attached to it. And you should be able to get that from the company either through their website or by calling them up. That certificate of analysis is the tests that were run on that batch of product. And the thing is that, it's not just one test. So for example, what we do is we have a triple testing procedure. So that way we test the raw materials at the beginning, we test it during the manufacturing process, and we test the final product. Now, the final product, what we do is we test it for potency to make sure that whatever label claim is on the product is actually in there. So if it says it's 125 milligrams of CBD, you can actually rest assured that it's 125 milligrams of CBD. The other thing that we also do is test for pesticides, residual solvents, bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella, mycotoxins, and also heavy metals. Now, these are all things that you want to see in the COA because this is a consumable product. You're going to be putting it in your body or your animal's body, and you want to make sure that it's safe, clean, and consistent. So lab testing and making sure that you have a COA attached with every single batch of product that's produced is going to be a key component of selecting the right product.
And when you say a COA, that's a certificate of authenticity, yes?
Certificate of analysis.
Of analysis, I'm sorry. Yep.
You were thinking about baseball cards, David. I understand that. That's, those are COAs and signed baseball cards, but I understand. Dr. Tim, tell us a little bit about your scholarship initiative that you've introduced, because that's what caught my eye this week, and tell us how that all came about and how people might be interested in getting involved with that.
Yeah, this is one of the coolest things that we've done, and this is something that I'm really excited about. So, just to give you some background about where medical education is right now, I talked to recent graduates of veterinary school, medical school. I talked to registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and time again, what I asked them is, how much about the endocannabinoid system did you learn in school? And more often than not, the answer is zero, nothing at all, nothing at all. And so the way that I explain this to people is this is the same as if somebody went through medical training and said they learned nothing about the endocrine system. Now, the endocrine system is the body system that creates and regulates your hormones. So things like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, and things like that. And, how wild would it be if you went to your doctor and you asked them, are my testosterone levels low? Tell me about my estrogen levels. How wild would it be if they say, you know what, I don't know anything about hormones. I never learned anything about the endocrine system in school. That would sound crazy, and quite frankly, the doctor would be doing a medical disservice to the client or to the patient by not knowing about that. But that's the reality that we face today, is that when we go to our veterinarians, when we go to our doctors, and we ask them about the endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoids that our bodies produce, the answer more often than not is that they either don't know anything about it or they don't feel comfortable talking about it. And so 5 to 10 years from now, we're going to look back and think about what a disservice we were doing for our clients and our patients by not knowing about the endocannabinoid system, by not talking to them about the impacts that it has on health and disease. And so for us, this is a way of giving back to the veterinary community and investing in its future. For a really long time, cannabis has actually been stigmatized in the veterinary community. As we mentioned earlier, the whole issue with THC and, animals getting into the owner's stash, and that's where some of it comes from. But, the thing is that we've known about the endocannabinoid system for a really long time. It's been almost 30 years now. And it's really time that we start incorporating this education back into the schools so that these graduates can talk to their clients about it and understand their patients' health better.
I'm fascinated with the fact that we can talk about it as openly as we are. And now, from your perspective, the animal kingdom can get some benefits from this as well. Are you confident that the federal government that's looking into regulating CBD knows what the hell they're doing? Because I'm not.
That's a great question. It's a very complex and complicated question.
Yeah.
That one gets complex. And what I'm always in favor of is increased access, because the way that I see it is that cannabis has been prohibited for the past 100 years, more or less. Mm-hmm. And what a great disservice we've done to the people of the country and the animals of the country by doing that. And because what's happened is our knowledge of cannabinoid therapeutics and the endocannabinoid system is not where it should be. Right. Imagine where medicine would be today if prohibition against cannabis had never happened. And so for me, it's really about making that push towards that time in the future where cannabis is not some sort of prohibited substance. It's not some sort of hush-hush topic that people can't talk about, but it's talked about openly, and it's talked about when it, especially when it comes to our health and understanding disease processes better in both humans and animals.
So any comments regarding CBG or CBN with respect to pets?
Ooh. Great question. And that's something that we're actively doing R&D on. We're not just looking at CBD, but we're also looking at other cannabinoids like CBC, CBG, CBN, CBDA, because we know that there's been over 140 different cannabinoids that have been identified, but all the talk has been between THC and CBD. And now some people are starting to talk about CBG and CBN. But the reality is our understanding of the other cannabinoids outside of THC and CBD is still very, very, very early stages. And even when it comes to THC and CBD, let's be clear, our understanding of that is still early stages as well.
What's CBG? Because I just held up the Hemp House Farms group sent me this stuff, and it's been unopened on my desk now for a number of months because I'm really not sure what to do with this. I know it's a cannabinoid. What do we have any idea? And is it safe for me, a human, or should I just wait and give it to David for his pets?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the plant, CBG is the precursor cannabinoid. So CBGA, which is what it is in the plant, actually gets converted to the other cannabinoids. Now, in terms of its therapeutic potential, we still don't quite know yet. And this is what's remarkable about this market, is that the market moves faster than the research. So for example, right now you're able to buy CBG products, but in terms of the clinical studies that have been done on CBG, almost nothing. And so same thing with the other cannabinoids out there like CBC, you're able to purchase CBC, but in terms of the clinical studies that have been done on CBC, there's just about nothing out there.
Yeah. And I thought the CDC was the Center for Disease Control. I didn't realize it was a cannabinoid too. No, I'm only kidding. Look, there's so many. You mentioned the market precedes the research, right? Isn't that what you just said?
Right.
By the way, how sad is that? Because I think that we all recognize the importance of education when it comes to any kind of medicinal product, whether that's plant-based or chem lab based, right? And to have to work within the sculpture of what we've got right now, it's not exactly the most conducive to learning about new things, because everywhere you look, there are federal regulations and other rules and regulations designed to protect us from what we don't know, yet they're not allowing us to study what we don't know. It's a really bad catch-22 right now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's the thing that we've seen for a very long time is, there are a lot of researchers out there that are really interested in studying cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. But traditionally they've had to jump through so many hoops and so much red tape just to be able to study it. And, the hurdle that they've always come up against is they say, we want to study this because we think it has medical benefits, potential therapeutic benefits. And the pushback is always that, well, it's a Schedule I substance. There is no medical benefit for a Schedule I substance. And so you get stuck in that catch-22, and it's like, we want to study it, but then they say, well, why do you want to study something that has no benefit? Well, because we think it has benefit, and we want to disprove that the idea that it doesn't.
Yeah, but it's a Schedule I drug, and it can't be studied in a safe manner.
Yeah, right.
So that's where the hemp, the farm bill actually was really important to allowing a pathway for a lot of universities and researchers to be able to study cannabinoids, particularly CBD from hemp.
Yeah, if they can figure out exactly what the heck to do, because I got to tell you, they make it. The Farm Bill passes in 2018. It's a big deal, and they did it without even thinking about, okay, what do we do with it now? Because if it's a legal substance and it's going to be grown as a crop, how are we going to regulate it and research it? I mean, it was, as usual, our government just kind of did it because they felt like, I'd love to find out the inner workings about how that bill did get passed in its state, and without really doing their homework on what exactly it meant to be legal now. I mean, David, do you have any insight on that?
Bear in mind, Jimmy, in defense of the government, well, I'm not a fan of the way the FDA approached this, right? At least
Right.
The Department of Justice, when Colorado decided they were going to legalize, the DOJ stood up and said, you're breaking federal law, but here's what the guardrails are going to be. And that started with the Ogden memo, right? That laid out, here's what you can do and you can't do. The FDA just stuck their head in the sand and said, no, we don't hear you doing it. Right? So when it finally came up with the Farm Bill, they were so far behind the curve. They hadn't thought about it. They didn't want to look at the horizon. And that's why things are kind of jammed up that way, right? I'm not a fan of the way the FDA handled it.
And now what are we going to do? And now what are they going to do? Right.
Right.
Because now they're trying to figure it out. And every time, and look what happened to Charlotte's Web recently. They just said, well, not a dietary supplement. Sorry. We made this ruling when Big Pharma created Epidiolex for seizure medicine. Right. I mean,
that was a real stock crusher for Charlotte's Web.
I shake my head only because we're right in the middle of it now, because we are able to talk about it openly, which is progress. But Dr. Tim, you've already figured out there are plenty of loopholes now that we've got to figure out a way through for the benefit of our favorite furry friends, our animals, as well as our fellow humans as well. Tell us how people can get involved and perhaps apply for a scholarship that your group's involved with.
Yeah, sure. So they can go into our website. It's VETCBDhemp.com. You'll find a charity tab up at the top. And we have a number of initiatives there, but it's listed under the scholarship. And so the way that we have it set up is it needs to be peer nominated. And so what that means is if you have somebody that you feel is a exemplary example of what it means to be a team player by, incorporating others in your environment, lifting them up, and really being a leader in your space, then you nominate them because we want this to be a group community effort. We want to identify the people that are really going to be not just the leaders of tomorrow, but the people that really bring everybody into this space.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, congratulations on this initiative. I know that we need more people like yourself who are clear thinkers and also thinking about the next generation, because we are just now starting to scratch the surface of our knowledge about this incredible plant that has been put on this earth for thousands of years and used medicinally for thousands of years. But we all know why it was prohibited 100 years ago or 80 odd years ago. And we're still fighting that fight now. So Dr. Tim Shue, again, thank you so much for joining us here on this Friday afternoon edition of Green Rush Live. And again, you are welcome here anytime if you need to wave the flag in whatever capacity for our fine feathered and furry friends that I know all you dog lovers and cat lovers out there want to make sure that you take care of, just like you would take care of your own, because they're part of your family. Right, guys? You both have dogs, I know, right?
Absolutely.
I just rescue them. That's what I do. But anyway, and we'll talk about it. We're going to take a break. We continue with more. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies, companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, cannabis has saved my life, cannabis has changed my life. Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time, it's a whole new world of weed. But as the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another half hour of Green Rush Live. We're here every Friday afternoon from 4 p.m. Eastern to 6 p.m. Eastern. We follow up our program as we do every week with our weekly Weed Talk News show, where we have reports from, I think we've got 6 different state reports this week. We've also got a interview with the High Times competition director, Mark Kaz, because the Cannabis Cup from High Times is coming to the Massachusetts area. And in fact, I know that there's a dispensary owner involved with that High Times Competition Cup because I gave you guys a plug on the news show. And I want to welcome in a couple of old friends and a new friend. Jeff, you're my new friend. Okay. Ulysses and Laury and I go back a few years. So get in line, pal. But again, thank you all for joining us. And of course, as always, my sidekick, David Rabinovitz, is with me. And of course, David, you know a lot of these people too, don't you?
Well, I know Laury very well. She and I, not together, but we were both trained in the social training program. And we ran a couple of sessions together. In fact, one, I believe, at Cush Grove in Mission Hill. That was the night I met your father.
Yes, we did. We go way back, David.
Yep. In fact, I was talking to Marcus and Mike yesterday.
There you go.
And she's still with her father. Where's Carl, Laury? There he is. Yeah.
Oh, look, there it is. Oh, that's great. We've had a dad sighting. I love that. Wave. You can wave. We love all dads.
Moms do.
And moms too. Well, isn't that funny? By the way, you know that saying, right? Whenever the athletes get on camera, they're always waving. Hi, mom. Right? It's always the mom that gets the shout out, not the dad, right?
Now we get both dad and mom right now.
I like equal time. That's what it's about. Well, first of all, we should mention that both Laury and Ulysses have opened up Major Bloom, which is a new adult use dispensary in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. Jeff is giving you a silent salute with a round of applause there. That's congrats, because Jeff is in the process, I believe, of trying to open. Am I right, Jeff? You got to unmute yourself. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I'm in the process of trying to get open. So that's supposed to be happening within the next 6 to 8 months. So, we in line. Absolutely. We got a provisional around the same time. Major Bloom got theirs as well. So they got their license to operate, and we got a provisional. So here we are. So I'm trying to let the next level in line.
Congratulations.
What's the location?
I'm sorry?
What's your location?
Dorchester. I'm in Boston. 571 Washington Street, Dorchester. 571 Washington Street, Boston, which is Dorchester. 02124 zip code.
Just in case we want to send you a postcard. Okay. But Ulysses and Laury, here's my question for you right off the bat. You're in Worcester. Jeff is in Boston. Why Worcester instead of Boston for you guys?
Well, let me kick that off. Worcester is a community that I've been involved with for the past 16, maybe 18 years. And having lived in this community as well, it just made sense, being the second largest city in New England. Right. And, Laury knows the story that I almost thought that it was too big, but us working together, she's like, yeah, we can do this. So we ended up getting, 3 different licenses here and couldn't be happier being in central Massachusetts.
And how has the opening gone? I think you've been open now for just over a week. Is that what I'm
over a week?
You made it.
It's a learning experience. We're learning, we're growing, we're learning our community, we're learning who the people are. I know, as you guys know, you don't get to practice selling until you get your certificate to commence operations.
Right.
So, it's been a great opportunity for us to just expand our consciousness.
Love that. I love that. And David, I know this is something special for you as well, because I know that you've given of yourself to the community to help them actually get to the starting line and open up the doors and teach them a little about the challenges. But as Laury just said, until you open the doors, you don't know what's going to happen, right? Ulysses, what's been the biggest surprise for you in the first week that you've opened?
Honestly, the love from family and friends. For us, we actually spent the first 4, and I shouldn't even say that's a surprise, to be honest with you, but we spent the first 4 days just with our doors locked and accepting family and friends in the local community to come out. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I can, appreciate the most is just the love that we get from the local community and, people who have watched the journey, us get through this.
How many stores are open in Worcester today? Now, at this point.
That's a great question. So we were the last to get our host agreement. That was the 15th, but I don't think that there's 15 open. There's probably around 10. But in terms of like who we are, we don't like to call ourselves a dispensary. We're the establishment because I'm here in our manufacturing space. We do have a final license there. I'm working on some infused pre-rolls to get our commenced operation. And then we're also getting some cars outfitted for our delivery license as well. So, not to compare, it's just that we're very, very different than everything else that's around.
Well, that was my next question is what differentiates you guys from others in the Worcester area besides the love of your community? Because I know that is important to you.
I mean, I think I'll add to that is that the fact that we're both educators. Am I frozen? The fact that we're both educators puts a different perspective to it. And also we have a concept of trying to prove to individuals what it's like to put capitalism, but define capitalism as human resources instead of monetary resources. So what happens when you put people first? That's the theory that's underpinning our entire business model. And that's what I think differentiates us as well.
Jeff, that's a good lesson for you to learn. You're following that one. Are you taking notes on this conversation?
I am. It's absolutely. I mean, I've been taking a lot of lessons from Laury. Laury's one of the reasons I'm in this industry. So I've been paying attention, always listening, and always, like she said, she's an educator. So I've been learning from her. So
isn't that what we all are, guys? Aren't we all educators? Because, and I remember, you guys know who Beth Waterfall is. She had a great quote. I'll never forget this. She goes, there really aren't any experts in cannabis right now, because we're still learning. The learning curve is still so high. We just had a veterinarian on from LA who was talking about, giving CBD to pets. And you talk about a learning curve. They can't even figure out, the damn laws for CBD yet and what we could put in for dogs, let alone for humans. And of course, you have to go through the whole bureaucratic BS out of Washington, D.C. and the FDA. So we're all learning by doing. And isn't that the best way to learn, guys? Yes.
Students, for sure. We're all students. I mean, to have that mindset will continue to grow,
Absolutely.
And if somebody comes into your dispensary, Laury or Ulysses or Jeff, this is definitely training for you. Okay. If somebody comes into your dispensary and says, look, I've never used this before, but I've got horrific arthritis. Okay. Mm-hmm. How do you walk them through the process of explaining to them the endocannabinoid system and how your neurotransmitters work? Or you're already shaking your head, Ulysses, because you're saying, don't confuse them with fancy words, right?
Well, it's just funny because you say people that come in that have never used. In this particular community that we're in, I'm not sure that we've seen any customers thus far that haven't at least used cannabis, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I'll kick it over to Laury because she's got a scientific.
Yeah, I will say there's two things. First, if you're running a marijuana business, you have to be very careful about the claims that you make about your product because it's federally illegal and has not been FDA tested. You can get in trouble for making any claims. So anytime you talk about cannabis, you have to talk about your personal experience. So the way I would approach it, I'm like, oh, wow. So what I learned is that I have an endocannabinoid system, and this is how it works. And even beyond that, I personally have been in a car accident. So I use a lot of these things myself. So I can talk from experience. Okay, this is how this bomb helped me. This is how this particular thing helped me. But I won't make any claims scientifically about what it does because that'll get us in trouble.
All right.
And you're going to tell me that Big Brother is actually listening to your conversation in your dispensary. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, they have a secret shopper program where the CCC will send a secret shopper.
Wow.
And they will ask you questions and you can get in trouble that way. So you never know who you're talking to.
Wow. The secret shopper. I think that used to be called an undercover narc, guys. Isn't that what that used to be called?
CCC approved narcs.
So how do you, so do you have to use your own personal experience to explain it rather than recommending that this product will decrease your inflammation? Is that you can't do that, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. What you can say is it's helped me. I've heard it. I've heard what it's done in other people. Try it out and let me know what it does for you.
Yeah, and for the most part, honestly, Jimmy, is that people have lingering ideas around it, right? Like my grandmother, I can't say that she's a smoker, but she's heard that, balms and lotion help. You know what I mean? And other, old elderly people, I don't want to say it's a last resort, but they're like, hey, I don't want to take this medicine. Let me just try this. So I think the general public is very educated to the fact where, we don't necessarily need to have these crazy conversations. It's just like, hey, inexperience, this has definitely helped. And people know vaguely when they come in, for sure.
Jimmy, we got a question from the chat for you.
Go ahead.
Tell us about your products. How's the flower? Who grows it? What strains do you carry? And what's your best indica?
What's the best what? What was the last one?
Indica.
That's indica. Wow. All right. So right now what I'm doing is working on a product, pre-roll infusion, and it's an infusion of crumble and jelly breath. And the jelly breath is grown by the first Black cultivator on the East Coast, which is Just Incredibles, Reginald and his team over there. So for the past week, we've been doing a lot of packaging and pre-rolls of their strain called Gas Mask, and it's been our top seller. And it's been great. It's been great. So basically with the manufacturing side of things, we have an opportunity to bring in bulk material and then hand select products that we can put out to the market. But in terms of strains, we have, I think, 42 different strains. I'm not going to lie, I don't know them all. I think our best indica is probably from Cultivate, which I believe is Chocolate OG. It's a high testing one, really good price point. And people just love it. So it's nice to have variety. Definitely nice to have variety.
And you guys are taking part in the High Times Cannabis Cup Challenge, correct?
Yeah, we got, I think, 75 bags to sell tomorrow. So first come, first serve. We open at 10 o'clock. Definitely come through if people are interested in that.
Do you want to walk me through how that works? Because I understand there's some, although I don't know if we can talk about discounts, but there's definitely some incentives to get involved with it, right? Is that accurate? Laury, you're the attorney here. Make sure I don't screw this up.
Well, it's the most bang for your buck. I mean,
okay.
Honestly, if you were to buy these products individually, the price point would be differently, but this is all compliant. The CCC is well aware of it. High Times has been great. We're facilitating it. So, the average price point, I think, is around 200, give or take. Yep. But you're basically getting a maxed out 28 grams. So if you were to try to get an ounce of weed now, it'd probably be closer to, I don't know, $300, $400. But, again, this is all compliant with the state. They're well aware of it.
Right. I want to make sure. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. That's for sure.
You seem like the nerd, Jimmy. Yeah,
I'm far from that. You know that, Ulysses. Okay, you know that. Hey, Jeff. From your perspective, what do you think you can learn from the experience that Ulysses and Laury have gone through that will help you get open, which is really your goal right now?
Sure. I'll tell you. So just read maybe like a couple hours earlier, I called Laury just off the strength that I just submitted the our final architectural plans to the CCC. And then, it came back, we had to pay $1,500. Right. So I was like, $1,500 just to review plans that I just paid $5,000 for the license. So I'm like, are they trying to trick me? So I made a couple of calls, and I believe I called somebody that owns a dispensary that opened a couple of years, early last year.
Seed, right?
Yeah, Seed. And then he
loves Seed.
Yeah, he's like, I don't remember. He's like, I don't know. I don't remember. I'm like, what? Call. He's like, call somebody that was most recent. I'm like, I'll call Major Bloom. And he's like, oh yeah, call those guys. And then I just called Laury, and I got the answer. And she was like, yep, I paid it. I'm like, all right, say no more.
Dude, you know what's funny, Jeff? Tom is here doing a tour, and he called me too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, bro. He was
oh, just right after. Yeah. See, exactly. So like right after. So. Exactly. So, that's one of the best things that I could say for myself, that I have a lot of people that I could just call, with whatever question or text messages like, hey, whatever it is. And it just asks a question, I get the answer, and I thank you, keep it moving. So I've gotten, so much help, from beginning on. Like I said, Laury helped me with the application in the beginning. I mean, the application to be a EE, right? So from the very beginning. So she's done helped me out, throughout the whole process pretty much. So I'm sure, whatever it is that I need, I will continue to get that help. So, and I'm sure there's more things that I will need as I get closer to opening date, because, in my head, like, I mean, I'm glad I'm here today, because, certain things I just learned and I just heard, and I'm like, I'm happy. And like, I just took some notes as far as, okay, opening date, maybe not worried about, well, I mean, not worried, but take care of your family and friends first, day one, you know what I mean? And hey, look at Tomas, you know what I mean? So again, you know what I mean? So it's a whole process, man. So, and I just love the fact that, everybody's so willing to help everybody. This is such a new industry and nobody is holding out information. So, I just love it. You know what I mean? Actually, another friend of mine, he's actually doing an internship at Garden Remedies in Newton. He's actually working there. So I was just like, man, I don't know. I wonder which one of my friends I'm going to ask, like, yo, can they give me an internship for me to come work there as a bud tender or whatever it is, just so I could feel like I'm in the game. I could, you know what I mean? I could see it just, so again,
David,
I'm loving
there's a great idea. And I know you're connected to the right people here. What about hands-on training? When we talk at the big,
don't even go down that road, Jimmy. That is
experiential learning.
Last year, I got together with David O'Brien of the Cannabis Business Association in Massachusetts, and they wanted to do a mentoring program. And I was told not now by the CCC. And I don't know if the CCC has got a mentoring program up or running yet, but
why?
Why
does he know?
So Roxbury Community College got one going on. So that's the one that he's part of. It's from RCC. So I don't know, if they have any relations with the CCC. I mean, I could find out more information. But I know he like the internship that he's going through is through RCC, Roxbury Community College.
See, now this is one of my biggest beefs with our friends in Washington, D.C., as they continue to develop a platform or a plan to go to federal legalization or expungement of records of those who've been incarcerated. How are we ever going to train people who have been unfairly put behind bars for nonviolent cannabis possession crimes and give them an opportunity to get into this industry without some kind of an internship or workforce development program? To me, it's a no-brainer. I don't get why this doesn't happen. Can anybody, David, unmute yourself and enlighten me. Unmute yourself, David. Go ahead.
If you've got a workforce development training program, it's likely funded at some level with federal money, and therefore you can't do anything with cannabis. So now you need a group that doesn't have federal funding to do that. That's where the CBA stepped up and they wanted to put a program together.
Right. And in fact, I've talked to some multi-state operators and I flat out asked them, what are you doing to help those who have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs? Do you have workforce development programs for those that perhaps, and of course, most of them give me spin when I ask those questions, but I do hope and think that down the road, that has to be part of this plan. I mean, you guys tell me, am I wrong? Am I barking up the wrong tree, so to speak? One of you has to unmute to answer the question and help me with this.
Laury looks like she's thinking it over.
Either that or she's frozen. I haven't figured out which there. Ulysses, you got some insight on this. I know you do.
Yeah, I was just looking at Laury. She might be frozen. And I caught the tail end. Can you repeat that?
Hey,
So what I'm frustrated about is when I talk to either multi-state operators or federal lobbyists that are down there trying to impact policy. And I'm like, hey, it's all fine and dandy when you've got Senator Cory Booker calling on saying, look, this is a social justice bill. We have to give opportunities to people who have been jailed unfairly, an opportunity to get into this business. Well, you can't just have them show up and start selling weed in your store. You actually have to give them an opportunity to learn how to do that. You guys were talking about that when you opened up, that you're still learning how to actually go through that process. And of course, track the seed to sale experience, because that's what everybody has to go through to keep track of all this.
Absolutely.
So I guess, you know,
well, one thing that we like to discuss is that, you know, it goes beyond just the industry, right? Like when people have been harmed by prohibition, it's decimating to their community, it's decimating to their family. And, you know, some people can be in a position to not actually want to be part of the industry. They just want to be part of healing. So I think that's one thing that's a common misconception, is that, oh, you got arrested for cannabis, come work in the industry. It goes beyond that. It really starts with healing communities and healing families that have been impacted by prohibition.
So how do we do that, Ulysses?
That is a great question. I'm going to defer to Laury because I'm sure she can answer.
Boom, boom. So the thing is that this is a very tough question, because in Massachusetts, the government broke families up. The government arrested people. Well, the government is forcing Ulysses and me to fix their mistakes. You following? With a direct impact program. And that's okay. We're willing to do it. We would have done it anyways. So the first step is the government has to step up and really do research on the harms they've done, instead of pushing it off onto marijuana businesses to take care of what they've done. If I spill something, I got to clean it up, right? I'm not going to force my little sister to do it, which is what the government is doing to us right now. Part one. Part two, how do we do that? It's through education. We have to continue to educate people to remove the stigma that is preventing them from even accessing this. Part three, we have to identify the issues that have actually been left. Ulysses talked about mental health. He talked about helping the community. For me, in my opinion, we have to mentally heal those who've been harmed. So it's about getting access to people on the ground, getting folks into mental health services, getting people into educational services, not necessarily to become marijuana entrepreneurs, but to become whatever they desire to do. But again, for me, it has to be on the government. Stop forcing these businesses to clean up the mess you created.
Right. And I will say that it's probably the job of not only the government, not only the businesses, but the individuals impacted as well, to want to be in a position to kind of trust, you know, it sucks to say trust the government, but like you can't be closed-minded about it. So I feel like, and that's one thing that like we've always been open to, especially going through this equity program and the economic empowerment program. We know it's new, we know it's not perfect, but we're in a position to be like, hey, it's here and we're going to make the best of it. Where, you know, I know a lot of weed smokers that are like, yeah, what have you been doing the past 4 years? And, you know, you just like, oh, okay, this is materializing. Now we see it. But sometimes you have to see what's not there. You know what I mean? Yep. So it just plays into the part of not only the government, local businesses, but individuals to kind of open up and want to get help too as well.
Yeah. Are we educating the government at all, guys? Sorry, you don't have to answer that question. I think I know the answer.
Honestly, the USPTO feeling as if the marijuana is going to be legal created a panel, and I was lucky enough to be one of them, where we were educating the United States Patent and Trademark Office on cannabis. So it depends on which facet of the government you're talking about. The Department of Justice they've been educated since 1925 when the Panama Canal research went through. So I don't think I need to educate the government any further. They just need to stop lying to us.
That's
and
it.
Do the right thing.
Spewing lies. It's further than not knowing. It's them knowing and deliberately lying.
They've known in 1944. They've known, like they know. There's enough data on this shit. So I'm not educating people who are willingly ignorant. Do the right thing, y'all.
So Jimmy, I got a question for Ulysses, because I think this will be fascinating for everybody, right? When did the store open up, Ulysses?
Officially a week ago. We opened up our public doors.
Now let's go backward. When did you actually start to put all the pieces together? Right?
I finished business school November 2016. Is when Donald Trump got elected. Yep. And 1/1/17 is when I read the medical regulations to try to understand what all this happened. And then Laury and I met in May of 17, I want to say. So it's really been like over 4 years. But, you know, prior to that, it's just being infatuated with the cannabis culture. So it was a couple lifetimes, really, to be honest with you.
So we've got somebody from New Jersey coming up next.
Right.
So I'm expecting we're going to have a fair amount of folks from New Jersey who are either going to be watching live or going to be looking at the clips when we post them. Walk them through what the steps were for you and how long the different steps took to get to the point of now you're open.
Yeah. So briefly, I mean, I think it starts with just having a passion and the endurance to do this. Because if you're doing it for money, those are all the wrong reasons for sure. You know, Laury and I both came from corporate experience where we were making good money, but at the same time, we weren't fulfilled. It didn't feel like it was enough for us to make an impact on our community. So I think it starts there with having the passion. I would say next is the network, because as soon as Laury and I met, we kind of secluded ourselves into our own kind of network and realized that we can do this stuff together. And then also just having a good network to ask questions to, kind of what Jeff had mentioned, just being very open with people about discussing the trials and tribulations and what's needed to get through to the state. And then after that, I would say what's probably really important is putting up your own money. You know, we didn't raise a ton of money. We didn't work with MSOs to get this done. You know, I basically put in a ton of money in my own savings, moonlighting for many years in my sales management job, and then having the capacity to raise the money that we needed through our local community and a personal friend of mine that I played college football with. So we didn't really make it past the family, friends, and fools, if you will, stage where we got money from private investors, private equity, venture capitalists. We're blessed to be in a position to stay within that you know, those early stage funding. So you know, I would say that plus, you know, having the capacity to get through licensing, you can do all that at a very low budget, especially if you have an expert like Laury on the team. But then I do know some people who are able to do it themselves as well. But I think a lot of people think that they have to raise a ton of money before licensing, which is not necessarily true. You just got to have grit and just know-how and endurance to keep going.
How long when did you have to start paying for the real estate that you're in?
Well, this is different for us because I know how to negotiate. I live in the community that we're working in, and I knew that this building was vacant for X amount of years. So it was the exact opposite. In fact, we ended up getting a check from the guy who had this building vacant for 20 years because he had to bring it up to code. So rather than him bringing it up to code, we're like, dude, just invest into the business. And, you know, we worked on it from that capacity. So
I love that. I remember that part of the story. Hey, Ulysses, congratulations to you and Laury. Congratulations in advance to you, Jeff, because you're going to get it done too, because I know you're determined to make it happen. So, and what better example than these guys right here in Worcester. So, first of all, thank you all for your hard work, for your passion, for your drive. You know, you're welcome on this show anytime, and we wish you the best of luck. And I know where I can find you now, Ulysses. Okay, so I'm going to come visit you to Major Bloom, and I look forward to seeing the interior, getting a tour.
Jimmy, come through.
Yeah, just to
piggyback
what Ulysses has said, it's definitely that. I mean, you know, a lot of people think that they need a lot of money to start this process. It's just, you know, you just have to have a willing mindset to say, I'm going to do whatever it is that I got to do, show up to these meetings, get these networks, get these relationships, and just keep pushing. Over time, you know, you're gonna spend some money. It's $1,000 here, $1,500 here, whatever it is, or whatever amount of money. But you know, over time, that's when at the end you realize you spend a lot of money. But it's not that you need $1.5 million or $4 million to start. You know what I mean? You just need to understand the rules. You just need to have some relationships. You just need to understand how to fill an application, how to put your name and an address on a piece of paper, and then just keep it going. That's really what it is. You know what I mean? Everything else that you don't know how to do, there's an expert there. There's an architect, there's an engineer, there's a contractor that you know what I mean? That you just communicate and say whatever it is that you need to get done, and then they'll take it that. You know what I mean? And as far as the money, whenever you put all that together, the money will come.
Fantastic.
If somebody wants to find your shop when you get open, where are they going to find it? If somebody wants to find your shop when you get open, where are they going to find it?
571B Washington Street in Dorchester, 02126. Right.
If somebody wants some weed today in the Worcester area, where are they going to find you?
What's the GPS? What's the GPS?
76 Millbury Street.
There you go. 76 Millbury Street in Worcester. All right, guys. Hey, thank you, David. We got to get the next group in here, but I want to thank you. There's some friends. Love that. Love those shirts.
Teed's here.
Good to see you. We're going to
Thank
take.
you for putting us on. Thank you, Jimmy.
Are you kidding? I'm not putting you on. I just invited you to my program, and you are welcome. And I love your smile, Laury, Lucien. Keep it going. Ulysses, great to see you. Jeff, always a pleasure. David, I guess I'll see you after this break. We'll be back with more of Green Rush Live after
Peace
this.
out.
Don't go away.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies, companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts #1 Medicals First, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. All right, welcome back to the final half hour of Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media, and always I'm joined by my good friend,
David Rabinovitz.
And that's David, and he's in New York. I'm in Massachusetts, and then I've got 3 people from New Jersey because it's been a big week in New Jersey, and we figured this would be a good time to bring in some friends from New Jersey, including our regular contributor to our program, Tara Massu-Sargente. Tara, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for having me.
And I want to welcome in 2 attorneys to the program. One is Michael McQueenie. He is the counsel for the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association. Michael, thank you for joining us. And Sean Mack. Now, you're an attorney for Pashman, Stein, Walder, and Hayden. Did I get them all?
You got them all. Good work, Jimmy.
All right, guys. Well, it's been a big week in New Jersey. Who wants to be the news person here and explain why it has been such a big week in New Jersey? The first words, the first official rules have been floated. Tara, I'm going to get your response first. I'm sure you know what happened this week. Tell us about what happened and kind of set up the discussion here moving forward.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So yesterday, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission adopted their initial rules, which are very exciting. They posted very thorough rules for growing, cultivating, processing, and dispensing. And then they posted a brief summary of wholesaling, manufacturing, wholesaling, distributing, and delivery inlet. So we got a whole lot to deal with. There's 160 pages of regs there. Their main
and we should say
for social justice and diversity and yeah. Do you
okay.
Set up?
No, we did. We do know. We do know that you're in a car, so we do know that your Wi-Fi is going to go in and out. So I'm going to throw it now to Michael for his reaction to those words. And what I find interesting here right off the bat, and I got the 160 pages, the federal law is 163 pages. Your law in the state is 160. Is that a coincidence? I mean, there's a lot of issues, right?
Well, well, look, at 160 pages, I don't know if you can tell through the Zoom link, but I got bags under my eyes because I was up all night reading it. The one thing that I always kind of frame with regulations, right? I mean, we have the statute. The statute is like the bones of the body. The regulations, it's like the muscles and everything else, right? So now we got the muscle tied to the bone, and now the New Jersey cannabis industry is ready to run, right? So look, they're detailed and they need to be detailed, right? This is a regulated industry at the end of the day. And the thing that gave 67% of voters in the state of New Jersey confidence with adult use moving forward was the fact that we would have a structure that saw how this process was manufactured, cultivated, and dispensed to the consumer. And we got 160 pages of depth that do exactly that. They provide consumer confidence. They provide safeguards for everyone involved. It's looking at the industry and making sure that it's acting responsibly so that when folks make the responsible adult use choice to consume cannabis, they know they're getting the safest possible product possible.
Now, here's the loaded question, Sean. 562 municipalities out of 565 voted for legalization of cannabis in New Jersey. And about half of those 562 have pulled the old NIMBY flag, right? Not in my backyard. By the way, the same thing happened in Massachusetts when it first happened. So welcome to the club.
It reminds me, Jimmy, you ever see on YouTube the spoof MasterCard commercials?
Yeah.
Right. There was one from 2004 when the Sox won the series, and the movers show up to the guy's house and they take the child from the mother, and he's like, "Oh, come on, I was only kidding." Like he would give his firstborn if the Sox could finally win. Well, that's kind of like what's happened every time it gets legalized in the state. It got legalized, and you're actually going to put it here? No.
Right. Welcome to the world of regulation and legalization, Sean. And obviously, the Massachusetts experience is a couple of years ahead of the New Jersey experience now. And we just had, three people, on from the Massachusetts area who are all social equity applicants. One just opened after 4 years and they've got their license and they're ready to rock. And then another one is still trying to get to that point. It's a journey and it's just beginning, right, Sean?
It certainly is. And it's interesting. You listen to all these towns in New Jersey who opted out, and the mantra that was repeated by all of them was, we don't know what the regs are. We can't make up our mind until we see what the regulations are. They're not coming out until August 21st. We have to make up our mind that same day. So we're opting out until we see the regs. Unfortunately, the regs that came out were very helpful for everybody who's interested in applying for a license and operating a business, but they don't tell the towns anything. So the towns know nothing more today than they did yesterday, which is that the state's going to have a very highly regulated business. It's going to ensure that these operators are following the rules and operating good facilities and making safe products. That's what they knew before. That's what they knew today.
Go ahead, Tara.
Yeah, I was going to say, though, the towns, they are giving them their own autonomy. Jeff Brown even said when they were going through the slides yesterday, he said, we can't tell the towns where to put these. There were things they don't have jurisdiction over. And they're giving towns are even allowed to give their own feedback to who they would like to see operate in their municipality. So really what they're saying is, we want the towns to be happy. We want the towns to make decisions that fit them. And I think the omission of regulation to, put a stronghold of this is what you have to do says everything. So all these towns who were waiting for the regs are basically go make an ordinance and, time for the ordinance is done, but, it's your town, run it the way you want.
And here's my biggest beef with all this. The voters in each town voted for it. Okay. What I see happening again and again, whether it's Massachusetts, whether it's at the federal government, whether it's in South Dakota, okay, is the people that are elected to listen to those who put them in office. I don't want to point fingers. I don't want to put blame on anybody, but their job is to get educated now about this new industry. And it's almost like, oh God, do I really have to? Yes, you do. You actually have to read about the amazing amount of information that's out there about this industry now. It's not the first state of the union to legalize it, right, guys? I mean, at this point, you would think that there is some knowledge that they can find. And certainly there's this thing called Google that knows everything, right? Michael, what's the process of actually educating the elected officials in these towns?
Well, I mean, candidly, it's a street fight, right? You got to go town to town, official to official, and dispel them, right? Because one of the problems, and I know, speaking with Tara and Sean, this is we're almost myopic in the industry, right? Where we know what we know, and we know what we know so well, right. We forget that other people aren't as vested in the industry, right? And I tell you what, probably since this the adult use law was implemented in February, I've probably spoken to municipal officials in 20 plus towns, right? And I would say the vast majority of them, when you tell them what these businesses are as compared to what their misconceptions are, they kind of have that aha moment. And the critical thing I just want to flag about New Jersey and the opt-out period is, remember, they had to opt in or opt out by this weekend, right? Nothing precludes them from opting back in. So I'm already hearing from towns and municipalities saying, you know what, we just didn't want to we didn't want to be caught flat-footed on this deadline. We can always opt back in. And the critical thing that I've always said to municipalities, notwithstanding that, is you can ban every business under the sun. You can't ban the deliveries from coming into your town. So whether or not you want the dispensary, in your downtown neighborhood or on the fringes of town, nothing's going to change the fact that just like I can order a pizza, or as we've seen in the pandemic, even a cup of coffee to my front door, I can order cannabis from any of the number of other towns. And I tell you what, when I always say that to the towns, I say, who's going to get the tax revenue from that sale? Your neighbor, not you.
Right.
That's a great point, Michael. In fact, I was making that point to a select board of a small town in Massachusetts recently, and I pointed out to them, if you're worried at all about home delivery, stop worrying. It's already happening. You can read the articles about how that business works, and it's very technology driven right now. You go onto Facebook, Instagram, or Craigslist, you find the person who's going to sell it to you, you place the order electronically, you either put the cash in your mailbox and they drop it off there, or typically you're paying through Zelle, Venmo, Apple Pay. It's already happening. You're just not getting the tax revenue from it, and the people who are doing it aren't paying payroll taxes. But it's not like David, you can ban it.
And you're not creating the jobs in your town. You're letting some other town get those jobs.
That's right.
And David and Sean, just one point on that. One thing that I want to see that really rang out from the regulations itself, right? Where they're talking about how many dispensaries they should authorize and license. And the key thing that they said in the regulations is we need enough dispensaries to serve market demand. But what they also said is we need enough dispensaries to disincentivize folks from going to illegal sources. And what we've seen a lot of in the last couple of months in New Jersey is the proliferation of illegal delivery services. So to your point, this whole experiment in legalization is about getting safe product. And one way or another, people are getting cannabis either from lawful sources or illegal sources. And I would put out that it's better to get a safe product than one that you have no clue what's in it.
Yeah, and in a regulated market, right?
Yeah.
That's why we're all here. That's why this industry exists now, is that even though the legacy market's been around for as long as they prohibited it, I think they recognize now that it's time to come clean, get tested, be legal, play within the rules. But as you guys all know, it's still a challenge to figure out those margins because, can you make money in this industry? Sean, I mean, as an attorney and somebody who, you deal with these people all the time, everybody thinks, oh, once you get that license, man, you're going to print money. That isn't true either, is it, Sean?
I mean, you talk to the existing operators in this state, they struggled for years just to stay alive and, borrowing money on outrageous interest rates. And I mean, with that debt capacity, carrying that and trying to survive through this because they don't have access to the real banking markets, right. It's really difficult. And one of the interesting things, New Jersey has this concept of a micro license. So the idea is, for smaller operators, get people involved in this. but it limits your ability, the amount of product you can have on hand or sell or cultivate. So you don't need as much of an investment to get started, but your upside's also capped. So it's going to be very interesting to see whether the micro businesses actually can start to turn a profit, just given the economies of scale and things.
Yeah, but it's a great way to get started, right, Sean? Because then you can grow into it, you get your customer base, and then you try to transform into the next license class.
Exactly. That's one of the best things they did, was allow the micro licenses to expand, to convert into a full license once they demonstrate that they know what they're doing, they have a plan, they have a following. Look, it's a great way to encourage, boutiques, especially on the cultivation side. That's, boutique model there is perfect. And we've seen it with the craft beer industry. It's going to follow the same thing.
Yeah, we have a similar license class up in Massachusetts.
Are the New Jersey, the people that are making the rules and regulations, one of the things about Massachusetts is they looked at some of the other states and tried to learn from both the mistakes and the successes that they had. One of the states in the union that I think made the most sense and has they were able to launch their adult use market quicker than anybody was Arizona. You guys in New Jersey only have a handful of medical licenses right now. Does it make sense to give those operators an opportunity to get right into the adult use market? Have you heard that might be happening at all? Michael, you're shaking your head.
Well, so again, I'm general counsel for the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association, which is the association of the licensed medical operators. So you raise a great point, right? The stronger a medical infrastructure, right, the easier it is to start that pathway, right? Because this is all about logistics at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. And our legislature recognized that loud and clear, and they provided a pathway, and the regulations reflect that, right? What the regulations reflect is the same exact thing that our association and the individual operators stand for, is that we will take care of the patients first, right? So part of that application is a certification by each individual operator that, hey, look, we're going to certify that we have enough product, inventory, and access for individual medical patients, but provided that we can show that through our data, yes, there's enough surplus to get to the next level. And I tell you what, one of the problems with New Jersey's medical marketplace is that, like many other cannabis marketplaces, it's been one that's been hampered with litigation, right? So there's been another 24 medical licenses caught in the pipeline. My hope, and I think the state's hope, is that more of those will get released in the next couple of weeks, especially with adult use coming. But unequivocally, the existing medical operators in the state of New Jersey have risen to the challenge of making sure that they've expanded with patient expansion, and that they're also ready for adult use when and if the state authorizes it.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, I got a question for you and Sean. So we've got a chat that I'm always looking at and monitoring, and there's a lot of discussion going back and forth about license caps. Talk a little bit about license caps in New Jersey and whether you think the license caps are good or whether they're harmful.
Well, I'll briefly give you my 2 cents on it, right? Our legislators and our regulators have been heavily influenced by the experience of Colorado and Oregon, especially around the year of 2016, right? And the concern and the reason that we have a cap on licenses, and again, it's only on cultivators, is so that we don't have oversupply and we don't have a marketplace that effectively collapses because of that, right? Because the more you overload the market with too much product, you're going to depress prices. And then the bad problem also happens where product ends up going out the back door and being sold again in the unsafe, unregulated marketplace, right? So that's the reason it's in there, just to start, right? The CRC is going to revisit that over the course of the next 2 years. But remember, license caps and the number of licenses isn't the be all end all, because one of the other things that we saw come out of the regulations is this fact that there can be many different tiers of licenses, all the way up to 150,000 and then all the way down. And again, back to Sean's point from earlier, micro cultivators who can cultivate up to 2,500 square feet on a 24-foot vertical plane don't count towards that cap, right? So on the one hand, they want to make sure that we don't oversupply as a state. On the other, they want to make sure that there's room to grow for entrepreneurs starting from the ground up.
Right. And Sean, go ahead. I just want to throw Sean in here for a second, get reaction from him. You also know that just because they put a cap on something doesn't mean that there are going to be some people out there that are going to try and go and usurp that cap, because that happened here in Massachusetts quite a bit. You know that, right? That's human behavior, right?
That'll never happen. Not a chance.
Sure it won't. Okay.
Yeah, people are ingenious, and you gotta. That's why the regulators are out there, and people do things. And look, we want people to follow the rules and do this the right way and get this thing going. Look, and part of the problem is you have things like that going, and then you get more litigation, and then it slows things down again, and it's just not good for everybody.
Except for the lawyers. Come on, guys. Come on. That's okay. Go ahead, David.
What
I'm
do you
sorry.
think about license caps?
On the license, I'm with Mike. I mean, that's exactly why the state put them in. I'm very happy they did not put them on the micros. The micros is sort of it's a great experiment. It's giving the marketplace, giving innovative people, entrepreneurs, the opportunity to demonstrate something different. And it's great that they didn't put any caps on it. It also makes it so it's not a competitive market. It's not a competitive license for the micros. If you meet certain minimum standards, you're going to get your micro license. If there was a cap on it, now you have a competitive license. And as Jeff Brown from the CRC said, they don't want the real fight to get a license. They want the fight to be in the marketplace. Who's got the best products? Who's got the best ideas?
So did they put any kind of cap on retail stores?
They can. They have the discretion to put a cap on, but as of now, there is not one. And what the regulations say is when they announce, hopefully sometime soon, that they're accepting applications, they have the discretion to put a cap on it, or to say, we're accepting dispensary applications in this geographic region of the state only. So that's something we're waiting to see what happens.
And David, just on that point as well. I mean, so again, just to show points, there's almost two soft caps, right? How many are solicited in the notice, but also remember this municipal element. So a town has an ability in their ordinance to say, we only want to allow 2 dispensaries, 5 dispensaries, no dispensaries, right? So remember, it's not all the state doing it at all. It's also this, to your point, the NIMBY elements who said, how comfortable do we want to be, at least in the short term?
So in Massachusetts, here's the way it worked. We have this thing called Section 15 licenses, which is carry out alcohol, what we call package stores up here. And the minimum license count, if the community voted in favor, which it sounds like all the communities in New Jersey, but 2 voted in favor, is 20% of the number of carry out liquor licenses, unless they take a municipal wide vote to lower it. So most of our municipalities that have allowed marijuana are going with the minimum, which is 20% of those, the carry out liquor licenses. Is there anything like that in that 160 odd pages for New Jersey?
Nothing like that. I went to school in Massachusetts, so I remember the Packies.
Remember, right?
What school? What school?
Holy Cross.
Yep.
So
in Worcester, the last 30 minutes of our show is all about Worcester.
It's actually the cannabis capital of Massachusetts. You could really say that because the Cannabis Control Commission is in Worcester. There's about a dozen dispensaries in Worcester, including the only official social club, the Summit Lounge, the private social club, if you will, because we haven't quite gotten to the point where they're actually given licenses to social clubs just yet.
Very interesting. I'll have to stop by my next college reunion then.
There you go. Absolutely. Hey guys, go ahead.
I was going to answer David's question real quick. There is nothing like that. They basically gave the towns carte blanche up through this weekend to adopt any sort of standards they wanted, put any limits, put caps on it. But it's a lot of towns didn't take advantage of the opportunity, unfortunately.
Yep.
Well, again, it's an unknown, and the fear of the unknown regarding the product and regarding the business and the industry is driving a lot of the early stage regulations and rules. And you guys get to, go through that. Here's my pen. Here's my pink highlighter. Here you go. I'll borrow it. You guys can borrow it. 160 pages to go. Michael's getting it out. He's already got it going. Yep. There you go. That's right. Something to do this weekend while the storm goes by. It's just the nature of the beast. Listen, guys, we love the state of New Jersey for so many reasons. One is Tara has become a good friend to Pro Cannabis Media. She's a regular contributor to our shows. Obviously, you guys know her. What you don't know is I was actually born in Newark, New Jersey. So even though mom and dad gave me Newton, Massachusetts as my 4th birthday present in 1960, it worked out pretty well for me too, let's just say, but I still have a soft spot in my heart for New Jersey. And a pseudo brother of mine lives in Mahwah, New Jersey. So I do head down to that neck of the woods every once in a while. And I really want you both to know that you have a friendly media group up here, and our reach now is literally not just national but international. We're really amazed at the impact that we've had. Doing the live talk show is something I've done now for 40 years. I'll admit, not talking about sports is a little bit odd for me, but I'm learning quite a bit about this cannabis plant that has been a part of my life for a long time as well. So Michael and Sean, again, thank you so much for joining us. If they're interested, if people want to contact you, pick your brains, perhaps even get some billable hours for yourselves, how do they find you? What's the best way to find you, Michael?
Yeah, sure. So look, I'll start with the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association, and I'll just say real quickly, one thing that New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association has been doing over the last couple weeks, and will be a monthly endeavor, is we've been doing a social equity webinar series. We're going to extend that into a social equity office hours series, where once a month, anyone from the social equity community can come join, our team of operators and have a conversation about what's on their mind. That's for the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association. For myself, I'm also an attorney at Foley Hoag. You can find me on the Foley Hoag website. But thanks, great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Sean. How do we get to you?
Yeah, easily. We have the New Jersey Cannabis blog is one of the blogs I contribute to regularly. My firm also, Pashman Stein, or just Google Sean Mack Cannabis. I think I pop up pretty quick. So Jimmy, thank you very much for having us on. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. You've got a friendly place to go talk anytime. And we are always looking for other ways to use our ability to take webinars or Zoom calls and share them with the public. So, let's get our PR people to talk to my PR. Oh, wait, that would be me. Just have them call me and we'll take it from there. David, how do we get to you?
Who, me? You just show up on Friday afternoons, Jimmy. I'm like a staple here. I'm like Ed McMahon on Johnny Carson's couch.
That's right. And you and Kurt Dalton will be taking over next Friday's show, and I appreciate that to give me a day off.
So great. Hopefully, Michael and Sean, we can meet one another. I'm going to be presenting at NCIA in Atlantic City in early October. And Michael, if you, my partner and I were trainers for the first 2 cohorts of the social equity training program in Massachusetts, and we are now the consultants for the social equity. I forget what they call the program for the city of Boston. So if you're looking for somebody who can talk about some of the social equity issues, we'd be glad to help out.
Yeah, let's please talk more. Let's talk more.
It is important that we educate. We educate with our own knowledge. We share our knowledge. We share our thoughts, because we really are in this together. And that's another reason why I always say it's a whole new world of weed out there, people. Let's use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to another edition of Green Rush Live. Have a good weekend, everybody. Coming up on We Talk News this week, a major merger and debt acquisition. Story time in New York as Happy Monkey hosted a total. Coming up on We Talk News this week, a major merger and debt acquisition as Tilray bails out MedMen's debt and their stock soars. Is this another sign that federal legalization in the U.S. is on deck? It was party time in New York as Happy Monkey hosted a totally interactive Van Gogh exhibit, and Vlad Batista explains. Plus, a new Gallup poll reports that 1 in every 2 adults in the U.S. has tried cannabis. Which one are you? Plus, are you ready to be a cannabis tester? High Times is bringing its Cannabis Cup competition to the Bay State dispensaries, and we'll talk with their competition director on We Talk News next. PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry.
are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of We Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. So, have you shared your cannabis story with us yet? You know, you could win a state-of-the-art cannabis storage container from yourstory.com. That's your story with an I. If you tell us your story on our website, procannabismedia.com. That's where we stream 24/7 news, talk, and cannabis information all the time. Now, first up this week, another Gallup poll has been released, and for those in the cannabis industry, this only confirms what everyone knows. 49% of American adults polled in July have said they have tried cannabis. Now, considering that in the 50-year history of the most successful and respected pollsters in the country, it's the highest percentage ever reported by Gallup. They did follow up their original question about trying cannabis to get to that 49%. However, only 12% reported that they have actually smoked weed. No, they did not ask if they had consumed cannabis in any other way other than smoking the flower. Now, come on, Gallup people, don't be afraid to ask that question. There's also another major acquisition, not question, but a major acquisition in the cannabis industry, as the Canadian company Tilray has just the prescription for bailing MedMen out of its debt situation. Green Market Report's Deborah Borchardt has that story.
This is the Weed Talk News business update from the Green Market Report. This week, Tilray bought the majority of the outstanding senior secured convertible notes of MedMen that were originally held by Gotham Green Partners. The transaction is valued at $165.8 million. Tilray said the purchase sets them up to own a significant equity position in MedMen. In addition to the Tilray purchase, MedMen announced that investors led by Saruya Private Equity are buying $100 million of units of MedMen at a purchase price of 24 cents per unit. Air Wellness reported that its revenue rose 222% to $91.3 million. This was a 56% increase sequentially. Air is raising its revenue guidance for 2022 to $800 million. That's up from $725 million. And also this week, Air said it was buying the beverage company Cultivana, the owner of Levia branded cannabis-infused seltzers, in a deal valued at potentially $40 million. And finally, TerrAscend reported that its second quarter revenues increased 72% to $58 million. Notably, though, TerrAscend withdrew its previous guidance due to some temporary yield declines of flower in Pennsylvania. And also, the company said it's decided to increase the allocation of its branded products in its apothecarium dispensaries. Just as a guideline, the company raised its full-year guidance to $300 million last quarter. And that has been your business update from the Green Market Report. I'm Deborah Borchardt, and this is We Talk News.
In New York City this week, the Happy Monkey event producers threw a great cannabis-friendly event on Pier 36. It was in conjunction with the immersive Van Gogh experience, and this was a BYOC event. That would be Bring Your Own Cannabis-Friendly Event. And while consuming inside the venue was banned, plenty of people took advantage of the new laws, and Happy Monkey co-founder Vladimir Batista talked about those changes on last week's Green Rush Live show on Pro Cannabis Media.
They reached out to us through some mutual friends. We are known for our experiences on our events, and of course, now that cannabis is legal in New York, everybody kept referencing how amazing it would be to, add cannabis to that whole amazing experience. And, we had a meeting with them and we hit it off. And Wednesday was the first night, and it was like a grand slam, sold out, had every walk of life that you could think of, every demographic, every age. And it was an amazing experience, not just for my company, Happy Monkey, but for New York City, arts and culture, and just another glass ceiling and door broken for cannabis to be mainstream where it belongs.
There are two reasons to celebrate if you happen to be a cannabis advocate in Michigan. One is that the Last Prisoner Project has picked up another release of a prisoner from jail. And yes, that state has also set another sales record. Here's our man in Michigan, Rick Thompson. Rick?
This is Rick Thompson with the Michigan Report for Weed Talk News. Let's begin. A brand new MRA bulletin is out. It's called Compliant Creation of Inhalable Compound Concentrates. Infused products and pre-rolled joints containing keef, concentrates, or CBD additives have to be tested by a certified lab after the product has been spiked with the concentrates, keef, or whatever. You got to test those tarantulas, caviar, and moon rocks after they've been created, so the test results reflect the entire product, not just the flower. Apparently, some people have been testing just the individual components, not the final assembled product, and that's got to end, according to the agency. Sales of cannabis are setting new records in Michigan. And given how new the adult use program is, that's not surprising, but the upward trend is still fun to watch. In July, we sold a staggering $171 million in cannabis. Illinois, they only sold $128 million, for example. Medical accounts for about $43 million and $128 million in the adult use market. Now, what was the old record? $148 million set in June. Marijuana Business Daily suggests that the increase is due in part to a COVID-19 bump in cannabis sales seen nationally. And Michigan isn't the only state hitting new cannabis sales goals. Missouri and Maine also set new cannabis sales records in July, with the Midwestern state reaching $21 million in medical sales and the Atlantic state hitting $9.4 million in recreational sales. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
So have you heard the term called Cali sober? Well, that term is being used to describe the California trend of people who are not drinking alcohol anymore, just consuming cannabis when it comes to relaxing or catching a little buzz. Well, now there's a research report that explains that CBD can actually curb your alcohol consumption. The University of Colorado released the findings of that study that shows for those participants who use high CBD strains of cannabis, well, it'll actually make you or actually curb your use of alcohol. Now, if you understand the entourage effect that explains the interaction between THC and CBD, the two major chemical compounds found in the cannabis plant, you certainly understand that CBD can control the intoxicating effects of THC. So it just makes sense that CBD can also have an effect on alcohol's intoxicating effects. Now, for the rest of the stories from the biggest cannabis market in the U.S., here's the American Cannabis Report's Chris Smith with our California Cannabis Report. Chris?
I'm Christopher Smith of the American Cannabis Report with the California Roundup for Weed Talk News. California company gets huge the easy way. Ease is a vertically integrated cannabis marketplace and delivery service with 2 million customers in California and licenses in Michigan. Green Dragon operates in Colorado and Florida, processing more than 1 million transactions a year. Ease is acquiring Green Dragon, creating America's largest MSO delivery marketplace. The combined company will operate in a market area worth nearly $10 billion. The Canadians are coming. Canadian cannabis giant Tilray is still hungry. It bought the majority of the outstanding senior secured convertible notes for MedMen Enterprises for $165.8 million. This may seem like a lifeline for MedMen, one of the industry's early megastars, but MedMen has received several lifelines in the past, and they're still not on dry ground, so stay tuned. Exorbitant cannabis bribes lead to the arrest of former California mayor. Richard Kerr was the mayor of Adelanto. He was arrested last week for allegedly accepting $57,000 in bribes and kickbacks for granting local cannabis licenses. If convicted, the mayor will have plenty of places to stay because Adelanto is most well known as home to 3 prisons and 3,300 beds. And the funny thing is, the previous mayor was also charged for a similar scheme. And last, moms are finally coming clean about cannabis use. Like all Americans, if my dear mother, who's 83 years old, needed cannabis for a health concern, she's only 2 phone calls away from getting some. Even though it's illegal in her state and she can't simply go to a dispensary, she either knows a guy or she knows someone who has his own guy. 2 calls, try it yourself. But if a pollster called her on the phone, she would deny it because it's not legal in her state. And that's exactly why when I hear the new Gallup poll results showing 49% of Americans say they've tried cannabis during their lifetime, it means that 49% of Americans now live in a legal state and are no longer afraid to admit breaking the law. Now they don't have to tell Mr. Gallup, of course not, but rather, of course I inhaled. And I'm Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report, reporting for Weed Talk News.
Back here in the Bay State, it looks like the city of Boston will be hosting the annual Freedom Rally this fall in September, as long as the Delta variant doesn't ruin those plans. The weekend of September 18th will be MASSCANN's annual celebration of all things cannabis on the Boston Common, and it will precede the Boston Cannabis Week's plans for all sorts of activities and educational panels that will follow during the week of September 20 to September 26. Now, for the rest of the news from the Massachusetts cannabis scene, here's Ron Marshalsea. Ron?
I'm Ron Marshalsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. The cannabis businesses in this state are trying to make themselves appealing to potential customers without going against the state's restrictive advertising regulations. The industry-specific restrictions and the costs of advertising have led to different strategies for cannabis companies in Massachusetts, from the more traditional billboard and digital media advertising to approaches that look similar to political campaigns. The Cannabis Control Commission's regulations give marijuana establishments the right to engage in reasonable advertising practices that are not otherwise prohibited, that do not jeopardize the public health, welfare, or safety of the general public, or promote diversion of marijuana or marijuana use in individuals younger than 21 years old, or otherwise promote practices inconsistent with the state's cannabis laws. For nearly all forms of advertising, the CCC requires that the company placing the ad can prove with audience composition data that adults 21 or older make up at least 85% of the audience. This limits advertising opportunities and forces companies to reach customers in new ways. There are a few new dispensaries opening up shop in Massachusetts. Trulieve, a Florida-based cannabis company, opened their second location in Massachusetts on Southbridge Street in Worcester last Saturday. They plan to open a third location in Framingham before the end of the year. Also, multi-state cannabis operator and retailer Forefront will open its third dispensary in the Commonwealth, Mission in Brookline, to serve adults 21 years or older via online appointments and in-store pickup beginning on Saturday, August 21st. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshalsea.
Now it's time to head to our nation's capital for some news that has absolutely nothing to do with Afghanistan. Here's Vote Pro Podcast, Phil Adams with our DC report. Phil?
Hi, Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, here with the Weed Talk News DC report. Recent comments by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas could help free a man serving federal time for state legal cannabis distribution. Lawyers for Luke Scarmazzo are citing statements from one of the High Court's most conservative members and seeking a compassionate release for their client. Scarmazzo was given a 22-year sentence in federal prison for operating a California dispensary in compliance with state law. Last June, in a case involving an IRS investigation of a Colorado dispensary, Thomas denounced the federal government's inconsistent cannabis policy, which he says, quote, simultaneously tolerates and forbids local use of marijuana and strains basic principles of federalism. Scarmazzo's legal team wants the presiding U.S. District Court to take Thomas's comments into account when considering his motion for release. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley says he will press the Drug Enforcement Administration to grant a federal exemption for his state's medical marijuana program. Last year, the DEA rejected a petition by the Iowa Department of Public Health for the exemption from the Controlled Substances Act. In a letter to Carl Olson, a member of the department and a longtime cannabis reform advocate, Grassley focused on facilitating further research into medical marijuana, but also took up the issue of exemption, saying he would, quote, follow up with the DEA and seek further clarification. Grassley is the ranking GOP member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Virginia lawmakers are looking at ways to fast-track retail cannabis sales. At the inaugural meeting of the Joint Commission on Cannabis Oversight, legislators discussed expediting legal sales of cannabis, which aren't scheduled to begin until 2024 under the newly enacted legalization bill. Delegate Paul Krizik, a member of the commission, said, quote, we have legalized the use of marijuana, but we have not legalized the actual purchase of marijuana. Under the new law, the only legal way to obtain cannabis is to grow it or receive it as a gift from someone who grew it, both complicated by the fact that it's still illegal to buy cannabis plants or seeds. That's the Weed Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
Did you know that CBD can be a very effective treatment for cancer in dogs? Yes, it's true. And on Friday's Green Rush Live show, we have a few pet experts on the show with us to talk about CBD and pets. And yes, the dangers of THC and pets. Dr. Tim Hsu is the CEO of VETCBD, and they are offering a first-of-its-kind scholarship for aspiring veterinarians, and I am sure our chat room will be exploding with questions for our guests on Friday's Green Rush Live show at 4 p.m. Eastern. Now, it's time to go to Vermont to check in with our green nurse there, Jessie Lynn Dolan. What's going on in the Green Mountain State, Jessie Lynn?
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. The Vermont Cannabis Control Board introduced the newly appointed 14-seat advisory board this past week. The advisory board was created to assist the Cannabis Control Board's mission to safely, equitably, and effectively implement and administer the laws enabling adult and medical use. Stephanie Smith sits on the board for the Agency of Agriculture, appointee as the Cannabis Quality Control Policy Administrator of the State Hemp Program. Chris Walsh, the appointed cannabis expert on the advisory board, has numerous Vermont cannabis businesses under his belt and national corporate conglomerate connection. His deep but possibly questionable conflicting roots for an advisory position was voiced as a concern during public comment by Vermont Growers Association and the Vermont Coalition for Equity in Cannabis. The board will start to meet regularly to make recommendations to help the Cannabis Control Board quickly create and shape the upcoming adult use and current medical cannabis programs in Vermont. In order to collect feedback and input from the agricultural sector in northeastern Vermont, members of the Cannabis Control Board, legislative leaders, and cannabis industry specialists convened an interactive discussion and networking session at Burke Mountain on Thursday, August 19th. Panelists included Cannabis Control Board Commissioner James Pepper, Senator Joe Benning, Timothy Fair of Vermont Cannabis Solutions Law Firm, and myself for Vermont Cannabis Nurses. The goal was to gather pragmatic feedback and input about the formation of the legal Vermont cannabis industry and how to best capture its potential for the Northeast Kingdom and other rural communities. Cultivation challenges, licensing, food production, and tourism were discussed. Hosted by Eli Harrington, a cannabis regulation questionnaire and survey is available at vermontawana.com. After many months of being closed after bankruptcy, resulting in many disgruntled Vermont hemp farmers and customers, Northeast Processing, one of Vermont's largest and only certified organic ethanol hemp processing facilities, is under new ownership. With a brand new team of passionate Vermonters and Dr. Scott Warrington, former extraction manager at the Champlain Valley and Southern Vermont Medical Dispensary as lead, NEP is back in business offering high-end extraction services for the Northeast. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
So Mark Kaz from High Times, first of all, it's so great to connect with you. And I can't imagine how you got the Hollywood sign to change to High Times. That's just a magical thing, right?
This is how we do it. It's Holly Weed out here.
Tell us about the Cannabis Cup and how High Times got involved and why all of a sudden is it coming to Massachusetts?
So quickly, Cannabis Cup has started in Amsterdam in the 80s, brought it to the United States in the early 2000s. And we want this to go everywhere where it is recreationally legal and even medicinally legal. We've been working on Massachusetts for several years, finally got approval, and now we are off to the races. We have been wanting to do Massachusetts because we understand there's so many great brands and a lot of great product. So we try to do this competition all over the country. And finally, we're here in Massachusetts with kits going on sale this Saturday. So we're very thrilled.
That's awesome. And I know that one of the dispensaries is INSA, which has locations in Salem and in Springfield, Massachusetts. Tell me, how does one get involved with the Cannabis Cut if you happen to be a so-called cannabis connoisseur, which I'm guessing is your target on this?
Yes. You're saying how do consumers get involved?
Exactly.
Yep. So all of our information is on cannabiscup.com. That will list out all the categories of the judge kits that we have, list out all the 16 different retailers, including INSA, that we have within our network. So exclusive limited judge kits available at these retailers only. We have enough spread out across the state so that anybody should have less than an hour drive to get one of these kits. And it is all first come, first serve. So no application or approval process like some of the old days. This is now people's choice. So we created about 10 times more of the amount of judge kits that we have in past years. So everybody and their mother can participate in this. We want OG growers who've been in the game for 30 years. We want new soccer moms who are trading out their glass of wine for a joint at the end of the night.
Isn't it an amazing time to be in the cannabis space when you can look at that demographic and people say to me all the time, well, who's your target consumer? And I go, everybody who wants to improve their life, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what we see. And that's why we have a lot of categories, ranging from flower for the OG, just flower heads. We have concentrates for the people who love to dab, which is not too familiar for everybody. And then we have things like topicals and tinctures for the people who don't care to smoke, they don't care about edibles, and they're easing into this. So they can take a little lotion to their, creaky knees or their neck, or they can take tinctures and have a nice little nighttime droplet to help them get through the night.
You've run a few of these over the years. You said you've been involved with High Times now for 4 years. How successful has it been in other states?
Very successful. We typically, and what we expect here in Massachusetts as well, is lines out the door at each of these dispensaries. People will camp out sometimes. And yeah, it's limited kits across the entire state. And there's a ton of medical patients and adult users in this state. So we have 2,000 kits and way more than that in terms of people who are interested. So these kits will typically sell out within hours at some dispensaries, days at a few others. And then it's off to the races for these judges to take these kits home, judge them. They have until October 17th to fully score and judge all these products, and then we announce the winners.
Amazing to me that it's by October 17th. That does that coincide with the fact that that was the day, I'm pretty sure, that Canada went fully legal as a country. Did you know that?
That is a coincidence. I am aware of that, but that is a coincidence on those dates.
I got another coincidence for you. In 1970, it was my bar mitzvah day. Is that bizarre or what?
I love that.
Am I blessed? Am I blessed or what?
You're blessed.
Mark Cass, thank you so much for joining us here on Weed Talk News this week, and we look forward to the results as they trickle in, as it were, for the Cannabis Cup for High Times.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Jimmy.
So these kits go on sale at a whole bunch of dispensaries in the Massachusetts area. All are discounted prices in a variety of categories. So you can go to Netta or Caroline's or INSA or Garden Remedies or Pure Oasis, or even one of the newest dispensaries opening in the Worcester area, Major Bloom. Now, those two principals of Major Bloom, Ulysses Youngblood and Laury Lucien, will be joining Green Rush Live at 5 Eastern on Friday. Now, if you want to go the other way and actually get paid to grade or test cannabis, you can go to flowerandfreedom.com and sign up to get paid $1,500 a month to smoke and review weed, and of course review the effects of weed on you. Now, there are all sorts of stipulations, so you might have to check that one out on their website, but you only can participate if you are in a legal adult use state and you are over 2021. Only in America. That's another edition of Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.